Let's chat for a little bit about a mob outside your house. Rioters, looting, tearing your place apart. We got a little clip here of a couple that in the St. Louis area just used a pistol and a rifle to scare off a mob that they felt shouldn't be on their property. I don't want to talk about whether they were right or wrong. I don't know enough about that scenario, but I want to talk kind of pragmatically about that decision for them to walk outside to where there's hundreds of people in that setting with two armed, but you have no idea who's in the group. So first and foremost, let's talk about emotions. From an emotional standpoint, we've got a group of people outside our house in that setting, according to the homeowner, saying we're going to burn your house down, kill your family and dog. Emotionally, that would bother us. Emotionally, we would want them to get away from the home that we work for, pay taxes on, trim the grass, paint the house, etc. We've got a lot invested into it. Of course, we don't want our family hurt either. Emotionally, that would cause or should elicit some type of response. Now let's talk about the actual pragmatic idea of defending that house. So most of us don't live in a home like we saw in that video clip, made of stone, heavy masonry, etc., which is pretty good cover for most projectiles. Many of us live in homes that are made of wood framing, right? Lightly clad exteriors, vinyl, aluminum, siding, etc., and sheetrock on the inside. Not very good bullet stops, but what they are is some type of physical barrier. Let's just think logically here. There's a couple people trying to hurt you. You choose two options. One, standing in an open space with them, or two, having a wall between you, even if it's just sheetrock, plywood, and siding. Any of us are going to choose the wall. There's too many unknowns in that scenario, so let's go all the way back to the beginning, the emotional part. What's our goal? Our goal for most of us is we want to stop any violence that's going to hurt us or our families so that we can continue to live a long, full life. Full meaning enjoyment, right? I can't enjoy it if I'm in jail. I can't enjoy it if I'm in the hospital or paralyzed or dead. So we have to remove that emotional component from our decision making. If I do this, what will happen? Take the emotions out of it. And that is too much what happens to us human beings. So what's your goal? It's to live a long, full life. Does going out into the yard where there are dozens or hundreds of people in this sense put you in a situation where you probably are going to diffuse violence, or does it increase the odds? Let's start talking a little deeper. My home is completely surrounded by cameras, hard-wired cameras. Cameras that you can't kill the internet and I have no cameras. Cameras that I can view from multiple devices, like a monitor, like a phone, or other such devices. Cameras that are literally eyes that tells me what's going on 360 degrees around our property, up close and far away. That's important. A home like that should have some type of early warning system, which you can use cameras to have a visual alert. You can have audible alerts. Our cameras tell me if somebody has walked inside of a certain distance. That's cool. Look, all this stuff costs money, but if we're going to be pragmatic about it and we wish to live a long, full life, let's start investing money in that stuff instead of more guns and gear. Any type of structure is better than no structure, unless somebody's trying to burn your house down, which these people were told, according to them, would happen by this mob. That's a pretty serious discussion point. So besides being able to physically protect your property, do you have an adequate escape plan? In the big scheme of things, most of us are not going to face some type of mob violence like that, but there are over 1.3 million home invasions every year. That's a pretty high odd for an average home to be broken into. Let's go a little deeper. What's the goal? I keep going back to that. The goal should be live a long, full life. That means escape, evade, fight if necessary. If you have to fight, does a woman with, I don't have the same gun, but we'll just grab this because it's analogous. A little pea shooter like this is going to stand up to a mob of 100 people. Well, let's go back to emotions. From an emotional standpoint, most people, even violent protesters or a mob of people that are trespassing don't like the idea of being shot. So the answer is probably yes. People will not want to be shot. Even if you have a little pea shooter, they're going to want to run away from you. That's a gamble, though. Demoralization is what we're talking about. We're suggesting that the use of a weapon, the mere showing of it, and the intent to use it might be enough to have a bad guy want to take off or run away. That's not reliable, though, right? Because you may not run away at a sign of danger. As such, somebody else may not. So what else can we do? You know, there's a lot of really simple devices. So those people went out of their house to show force, to try to intimidate people, which is not a bad thing. Intimidation is not always a crime. To say, hey, get the hell out of here. We mean to protect our property. So the male had a AR pattern rifle, right? Looked like an old school AR. You can do a lot of damage and good work protecting yourself with a gun like this. That said, is it necessary? Well, let's go a little deeper. You can buy a bullhorn, old-fashioned bullhorn, on Amazon for $20 to $50, $100 for a really good one. Could they not have stood in the doorway while the missus was on the phone calling the local police, what they're there for? Stood on the front door with that bullhorn and said, hey, we are armed, you are trespassing, you are on private property, you need to leave now, the police are on their way. We will defend ourselves, we will defend our property, you are trespassing, leave now. If they had cameras, which that house was pretty fancy, they very well may have, you are being filmed, leave. At the very least, you are communicating without closing that distance to a group of people that you don't know their intent. And that, I think, is the problem right now. We see tons of videos surfacing of people being drug out of cars, drug out of businesses, people having their cars burned. I have a friend of mine who watched a police officer's vehicle burned in Salt Lake City the other day, and that officer is being chastised by the city council because her firearms were in the car. She literally had to flee her car, which was flipped upside down, burned, and somebody pooed, defecated on the vehicle before they burned it. I saw the film. It's pretty disgusting. People that are willing to do that, things like demoralization may not be a good option. And again, it's a gamble. So what's the goal? The goal is to live a long, full life. You may have to fight, and you may have to fight tenaciously. But do you put yourself in the position if you do not have to? And therein lies the question that we have to ask ourselves, depending on our age, our skill, our training, etc. If the goal is to live, at what point does fighting, does physically applying force become not only legal, but morally and ethically correct and okay? Most of the time, the legal and ethical part are very much the same. The moral portion is something that you have to live with. Can I live with my actions? Can your family live with your actions? Let's start thinking about these topics in a broader way, in a way where it's not just, I own these guns and I want the right to use them because I'm a badass and I film myself on the internet doing badass douchey shit, really is what it is. All these guns are cool. Shooting them is fun. But make no mistake, everything we do at CarryTrainer, the purpose is to protect life. Approaching a mob of people really does nothing more than expose you to a greater level of danger. Well, Mick, it's his property. He has the right to protect it. You're damn right he does. And I also have the right to give my opinion on what may have given a better outcome, not just for that family. And I'd love to have that guy on the Higher Line podcast, but for you. I've interviewed a gentleman on the podcast that did close the distance to somebody that was outside of his house causing violence. He ended up shooting and killing that person. It was justified. One, he has to live with what happened. Two, it took several years for it to be finished up in the court system. That's a big deal. His wife has to live with it. He had to move out of the neighborhood. Violence is sometimes the only answer, but it is oftentimes not needed. Most people that are doing this kind of stuff are not really expecting a husband and wife to show up outside their house with a rifle and a pistol. But, and the big but is, you have no idea who's out there. You have no idea what lies in the heart of one of those people. You have no idea if they just had the worst day and they're looking for some fool like you to take it out on. That's a gamble. Now, some of you may look at this and say, this guy's weak. He doesn't really believe in freedom or the Second Amendment or liberty. That's your opinion. I say bullshit. I say there is no such thing as liberty or freedom if you're dead or in jail. So we have to think beyond the emotional component of how we feel about a thing. That's where I'm going with all of this. So physical security for yourself, for your home, for your family. Something between you and them is usually better. Have a plan to escape if need be. Your weapon, you should be like best friends with. Know it, understand its functions, be able to operate it in any way, shape, or form, in any condition, in any light condition, at any level of stress. Stress, learn how to compose yourself and drop your heart rate down to an acceptable level where you can think. You always are going to do better when you can remain composed. Have a plan to be able to see around your structure. Get hardwired setups. All this stuff that's Wi-Fi is cheap. It's easy. Get the hardwired stuff. It's actually going to take you a little bit of time to run the wires, but it's better in the long run. Better picture. Easier to take care of. You can upgrade cameras later. No Wi-Fi needed, and you can view it on as many devices as you want to, depending on the setup that you have. A bullhorn's cheap. I can talk to you with a bullhorn, and you know what? It's a little disconcerting to hear that, because it's like, wait a second, this dude maybe's planned for this. Something like that is legit. If you're gonna walk outside, maybe you should think about something like this, because if you have a gun, chances are they may have a gun as well. Do you have medical training? I'd get that up to snuff. Our friends at D-Day are the best people I know in the business. Check them out. Don't look at this stuff so simply. I get messages of video sent to us. What do you think of this? That's kind of a weird way to approach such a complex situation. It's not what do I think of it, it's maybe how could this have been better? How could this have been avoided? How could this have been alleviated, or what could have or should have the person done to not been in that position? It's very easy to look at video footage and say this is what should have or could have been done when we weren't there, because we get the luxury of rewinding. We get the luxury of a bird's eye view that the person in the video did not have. So it's hard to make those judgments, and I think it's disingenuous for us. Start to understand how emotions drive your decision making. Catch yourself in traffic as you start to get frustrated, with a loved one. Begin to feel what that sensation feels like physically, and then if you can, and this is something that'll require work, try to drive yourself back down from an emotionally heightened state. I can control myself, I am composed, I am even. That is where you want to be, because it's going to allow you a better decision-making process. Don't separate that boundary of a wall in bad people if you can. If you're in a vehicle, remember you're in a big weapon. Drive away if you can. Use the horn. Don't run people over if you can escape that, but don't get out of your car if people are trying to hurt you. You've got some level of protection. Use the gas pedal and leave. Better yet, don't be there. Awareness is indeed the currency with which we buy time to act. Let's live a long, full life. Let's think about this stuff logically, pragmatically. Let's think about it from a standpoint of how do I get the result that I want? Let's try to remove all of the emotion. Let's try to remove all the bullshit that social media is telling us. And just think about it simply, guys. Love yourself, love your family. Give somebody a hug today. Don't be dickheads. I think we're gonna do all right. Yep, yes we are.